2 million gallons a day would be a major expenditure, another 7 million or so. Purchasing Galesville water, if you bought it right now, would be about $188,000 a year. We're not recommending that. We're just saying monitor the acquisition of the surplus water in that reservoir. Make sure you don't get it doesn't get sold out from under you, that it is available when you need it, and purchase it when it's needed. The water treatment plant on the South Umpqua would be again a major expenditure, but it's way off into the future, some 33 million, and then expanding that plant beyond in the 2040s would be another 15 million. So that's our presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions or.
Do you have any questions? The year numbers that you are those 2 years ago type numbers you had on there? Expand 18 million gallons. It said 2009 to 2012. We're kind of like halfway. Are they like 2 years off on all of the dates for all those years?
Just about 1 year.
Just that one?
I could add to the Public Works Commission. We've had quite a lively and interactive conversation on this plan on several occasions at this point. And as far as the water treatment plant preliminary design report, their recommendation that they forwarded was actually to accept the plan as opposed to adopt it, simply for the reason that they weren't comfortable necessarily with the dates and didn't want to feel locked into having to start treatment plant expansion right away. They want to monitor usage. We've produced, I believe, 10 years worth of, well, about 50 years worth of data, but 10 years worth of more recent data with peak day information. We're doing many of the recommendations that are made for capital improvements, because we've had this plan for about 2-3 years in draft form, have been made or have been scheduled. One of those is replacing the finished water meter, which will happen. Design's happening right now. The actual project will happen in the next fiscal year. That's going to give us even better data, because what we found when we replaced, I believe, the raw water meter is that we had about a 6% error on that. So they wanted to see more accurate data and see the need identified prior to beginning that design of the treatment plant expansion. From start to finish design through financing through finishing the thing, we're looking at between 3 and 4 years. So we need to be actively monitoring that and making sure we don't get behind on it. But that was the recommendation, was to adopt the plan as opposed to, and this is the water treatment plant preliminary design report. The recommendation on the long range water supply plan was to adopt it so that we can use it as part of our comp plan, but recognizing that the population forecast may be a little high.
Any questions, Mike?
Have we looked at purchasing water from the Umpqua Water Basin, whether that's a interconnect across the North Umpqua there, or even purchasing raw water at a reduced rate and treating it at our facility?
We're actually intertied with Umpqua Basin water around the Klein Street Reservoir. What we purchase from them now is very expensive. I don't know what their rates are. You guys could probably better answer maybe that question. But their rates are much higher than ours, so it would be a dramatic increase to be able to do that.
Does it reduce the need or the...
And I know they're going to be
and the plant, though? I mean, if
I know they're going to be serving Sutherland too, so I'm not sure.
But even though it's at a higher rate, I don't know how much higher, but I mean, there's a break somewhere in terms of that it becomes more cost effective to build your plant versus we can get a little more out of it, even though we may be paying a little more.
I don't know what their current capacity is, if they'd have to expand their plant to be able to provide that. So, but we can certainly find that out.
But it may be even not necessarily acquiring the rights, but acquiring water, in other words, pulling in more water on even from our intakes, or our intakes expanding our plant and treating that water, but purchasing kind of that raw water, or that sort of a right. It's sort of their right. We're paying them sort of for it as we take it, rather than paying for a right up front.
Yeah, most of the water rights are actually, my understanding is that they're locked into an area. It's much harder to move them upstream than it is to move them downstream.
The municipal right is different. We're
Oh.
allowed to serve outside of our prescribed area. Type of water rights.
And then the property, I saw it was in there for $350,000 for purchase last year, this year. But it looked like, if I read it, it really wasn't needed until we got into that expansion, which was, I don't remember, 12, 15 years from now. Does that sound right? I mean, why would we necessarily purchase it now? Later on, there was a recommendation I saw here in the PowerPoint that really said you don't need to do it until you go to expand your plant. It just seems like, I don't know if it's necessarily the short range thing we want.
I think as much as anything, it's a keep your eye on it, and if it becomes for sale, consider at that time.
Okay, I was just asking because of the time frame that was in it. And then you had a $7.7 million expansion number for a cost of moving it to 22 million gallons per day. Is that 7.7 million from 18 to 22, or is it from 12 to 22?
It's 18 to 22.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
I'm not sure I understand. Was this study done to create a water master plan?
No.
Oh, did have one more.
Okay, what was the purpose of the study then? Because it reads here that City of Roseburg long-range water supply plan recognizing that it may be in error or...
The only thing I don't think error is quite the right term. We're recognizing that the population forecast, which was done at 2.5%, has now been lowered to 2%, so it may be slightly high. This is a 50-year, where's your water going to come from plan, as opposed to the master plan that's currently underway, which is in the next 20 years, what's the specific expansions to the system that need to be made to serve your existing system and the growth that occurs during that time. And it gets down more into the nuts and bolts of reservoirs and piping and pumping and those types of things, whereas this is the 10,000-foot look at where are you going to get your water and how are you going to get it to that, nuts and bolts part of the system.
And I'm actually, I looked at that population, and I think Bill was mentioning earlier the population forecast, and that was one of the things I was going to ask about before you brought it up. But the also recognize that there's some industrial users. There was a proposed silicon chips, things like that. They use 1 million gallons of water a day just by themselves. So there's some pretty heavy water users out there.
And if we were to attract one of those to, say, the Dixonville site, it would definitely accelerate our schedule
Right.
on plant expansion.
I might just, if I could just pitch in, the blue line you saw was based on historical data and then projecting ahead. And as with anything in the future, it's hard to tell what it's going to be, but you're exactly right. If you do have a user that comes in and spikes your water use, in some cases we've seen those plants come in, and it could be 1 million to 3 or 4 million gallons a day, that you're going to have to take action in, because that would put you over the line. The idea is to stay ahead of your demands and try and time it out, because it takes time to develop water supply, and the city has made a significant and a very wise investment decades ago in the Winchester Water Treatment Plant, and you just have to look ahead. It just takes time. So, and at the same time, you can't have a dynamic user come in and suddenly you're behind the curve. Right now, you're ahead of the curve.